Hey, everybody. I'm Lesley Goldberg, the West Coast TV editor at The Hollywood Reporter. Thanks for coming out tonight. Without wasting any more time, let's hear for Kevin McKidd, star and director.
How you doing? Lesley!
Kevin, how you doing?
Good, how you doing?
I'm good, but let's talk about this episode. No one wants to hear about me.
No, I want to hear about you. But anyway, go on.
So I got here at 9:30. No. What was the most challenging part about this episode? First of all, this was terrific. I mean, talk about what your challenges were with this episode. Was it harder for you to act in it or harder for you to direct it?
You know, I've gotten quite used to acting and directing. You know, this is my 22nd or 23rd episode of television and doing this show, directing this show rather. And I was terrified when I first did it, and acting and directing seemed like an impossible task. And I think, you know, I'm Scottish, so I don't really toot my own horn that much, but I am actually really proud of myself in this episode, and I do think this episode is the kind of high tide mark for me as a director so far, but also as an actor directing himself acting. You know, because usually I watch episodes that I'm in and I'm like, I can see that it's 5 p.m. and there's only 3 hours to go and we're 2 scenes behind, and I'm in the scene and I look kind of frazzled behind the eyeballs, and I can see the kind of redness in my eyes and the kind of sunkenness in my, you know, eye sockets, and I look I don't think anybody else can notice it, but I'm like looking at my acting going, you seem a little distracted, Kev. You know, and I don't think I was in this episode. I think my acting in this episode I think that's partly because of Elizabeth Finch's writing, and I think it's partly because, you know, I just know this character so well now, and it's also because Teddy and Kim Raver, she and I are really good friends, and we've been, you know, it was like putting on an old sweater that you'd lost in the back of your closet. I'd hate to describe Kim Raver as an old sweater, but you know what I'm saying? A
designer sweater.
A designer sweater, Gucci sweater. But, you know, and it was like that. It was like coming home to something very familiar. It'd be very similar if Christina Yang and Sandra Oh came back. You know, it'd be like getting back into a relationship that feels so familiar. And we have a great working relationship, so.
That sound you just heard was everyone in this audience, myself included, saying, "Can Sandra Oh come back?"
I'm working on it. I'm working on getting Sandra Oh back. It might take a minute, though.
Yeah. Well, let's go back. You know, 22 episodes directing a show that you've been on for a decade. Let's go back. What is it that you love about directing?
I started directing, I'll be really honest, like I'd always wanted to try directing, and being from the UK and being from the working class end of the business in the UK, because in my opinion in the UK there is a class system that's very delineated, and you know, it's interesting seeing all these articles now about all these kind of working class actors who are kind of bemoaning the fact that all the great parts are being taken by the Etonian sort of, you know, upper class set. But to me, I'm like, why are they complaining about it now? It's always been that way in the UK, and that's part of the reason I left. And, so I'd always wanted to direct, but I kind of knew in my gut that I was from the wrong side of the tracks, really, to be getting that opportunity in Europe or in the UK. So when I came here, I was like, I'm going to pursue this. And when I landed on this show, I was like, I'm definitely going to pursue it now, because I saw Chandra Wilson do it just a year ahead of me. So she was like this guiding light for me. So yeah, I mean, that's how it kind of started, and I just, you know, pursued it. And was that your question?
No, it was what do you love? But that's
what do I love about it? Yeah. I don't. It was definitely initially like, I'm going to take this opportunity, and also I knew that my character was probably going to be in that show for a long time, and I'd heard all these stories about actors getting bored, or, you know, even though it's the most privileged job to have, to be a regular in a show with a constant gig and being employed. It's like the dream that you dream will happen. There's also that not a downside, but there's a side to it where you have to really manage your own mental, if you get kind of bored and complacent because you're seeing similar lines, or I think it's much harder on, say, like a procedural cop show, where it's like you really are regurgitating, exposition and all that stuff. Our show is not like that. But I think definitely I was like, I can learn to direct and kind of stop any of that kind of listlessness that seems to kind of infect a lot of actors who are regulars on shows. Well, not a lot, but some. I didn't want that to happen to me.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is like a double whammy. I get to have this amazing opportunity, and I also get to just keep my brain engaged so I don't get that sort of listless kind of ennui that can happen.
Yeah, and you mentioned Chandra Wilson being the kind of your gateway into directing, but how was being in Shondaland, how much did that help make that transition? I mean, we've all read stories, some of which I think I've probably written, about actors and getting these opportunities because Shonda wants everyone who works for her, whether you're an actor, behind the scenes, anything other position, to be able to do more.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, Shondaland definitely has created this model, I think, in this business of going, if you have enthusiasm, if you can show some talent and commitment, that's the big thing. If you show some commitment and passion for something, then you will be rewarded for it if you work in Shondaland. And that's doesn't always happen, It doesn't. It really is. There's kind of, they trust the people inside the company, and sort of push people forward. It's like an active, conscious giving back and pulling everybody forward along with the company. And it does feel amazing. I feel very lucky. And in a way, it only just started when me and Chandra were directing, I started directing. It was kind of, we were the kind of almost like the guinea pigs. I think quite a few writers had risen up by that time in the writers room structure, had started out as PAs and ended up being writers in the writers room. But as far as for us, we were the first. So yeah, I feel very lucky because I don't think it happens as much in other arenas. I don't know if you've seen it, but
no, it is very rare for when you have a number of stars on the same show taking turns behind the camera, especially when they're as prolific as you and Chandra. And look, Ellen Pompeo just directed too,
did.
right?
Yeah, she did a
Jesse
great job.
Williams is coming up next.
Jesse did a great job, like really great. Yeah.
Do you think other actors should direct their own shows?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's case by case. I think, it depends. Some actors, I think I've become a better actor, strangely, now that I'm a director, because I was quite a difficult actor, I think, to work with. I would be like, and maybe it's a thing, I can't decide, I'm debating myself. Maybe it's this thing I've lost, because now I'm a director, I kind of see the big picture and what dramaturgically we're trying to tell. Whereas before, I was just this actor that was like, my character wouldn't sit in this scene, and I'd have these huge arguments and like spend tons of production hours kind of like fighting for why I wouldn't sit in this scene. And now I realize as a director, it doesn't matter whether you're sitting, standing, or kneeling, as long as you say the lines and we believe you, So, it's really shifted my perspective as an actor, becoming a director, and I think it's made me a less militant actor. But maybe that's a bad thing that I've lost that. Sometimes I debate that within my head, and that's part of the creative process, I suppose.
When you're going to be directing an episode, do you usually ask for reduced screen time for Owen? I mean, this episode you didn't get it.
No, I didn't get it at all. It was interesting, this episode, because I was slated to shoot episode 16. And episode 16 wasn't quite ready. And Krista Vernoff, who I think is doing an amazing job on the show, and she's such a talent. And she had this kind of epiphany, and she went, 17 is written, Elizabeth Finch had written it as a standalone, because we were doing these standalones this year. 16 is not ready. Kevin is waiting to start prep, and we don't have a script for him. We're going to flip this around and give him 17, and I actually think Kevin should direct this standalone, because I think she just had this feeling, Mm-hmm. And that I really appreciate that, because sometimes this business, the TV business, can start feeling like this product, and just seeing a showrunner who is juggling so many balls and having to keep this thing moving forward on time and under budget and all the things that you have to do in this environment, but still being able to trust her feelings. is pretty impressive, you know.
Some Olivia Pope stuff happening there. Trust your gut.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
What about the challenges that you face when you're directing an episode of your own show? I mean, is it harder for you to talk to your colleagues and be like, you can do better on this take?
You know, everybody's very gracious with me, and especially in the first time I directed. I remember Patrick Dempsey called me, and he just before I started directing my first episode, and I was terrified. I literally had insomnia the whole time. I didn't sleep for a month. I was so scared. And Patrick called me the night before I started shooting and directing my first time, and he said, Kev, what you're doing is really brave, and he said, I'm going to, whatever direction you give me, even if I don't agree with it, I'm going to do what you ask this one time. And he did. And he was a true gentleman. He completely just, I was like, I think you'd sit there and stand on this line, leave, and then turn and look. And he'd be like, okay. Yeah. And he did it without questioning, you know, which I was very grateful for because, you know, it was scary.
And now with so many episodes under your belt, I mean, what advice do you have for your peers? Did you have advice for Ellen or Jesse when they were directing, or the actors out here?
I remember I spoke to Jesse and I just said, look, I think one of the things that I tripped myself up with when I started directing was I had pride, or I didn't want to seem, because all these crew are there and they're all amazing technicians and they all went to film school, and I'm just an actor who's from theatre, and so I didn't know all this stuff, all this technical jargon and language and mathematics of making films and all this kind of stuff. It was very intimidating. So I kind of did. I will put my hand up and admit it. I would like try and pretend like I knew what I was talking about, or I'd get pissed with the DP if he kind of questioned my choices, and like we'd have arguments. And I've realized that, like, and I said to Jesse, I said, listen, having done this and kind of trodden the more rocky road to get to where I am, if you don't know, just admit it. Be okay with saying, I just don't know what side of the line we should be shooting this coverage from. I just don't know what line size we should be on for this moment. But in my head, what I imagine is this kind of shot. And just own that, and people will respect you more for it, because I, you know, had to kind of fight through the slings and arrows of kind of my own ego. I had to fight with myself until I eventually kind of realized, you know what, it's better to just say, I don't really have a clue, but I have this feeling. I want to create this feeling in this moment. Help me as the technician how I can achieve that. And people, and I think Jesse said he really listened to that, and I think it really helped him just have a much less argumentative experience than I had. You know?
Yeah. I'm going to go back a little bit. You first directed, I looked this up, the first time you directed was a Grey's Anatomy web series called Seattle Grace, Message of Hope, 2010. That obviously led to directing in season 7, and now cut to, and not to bring up Scandal again, but Darby Stanfield just directed, made her directorial debut last week, but first directed a web series. How did that web series help you really, and you know, before you took on the flagship?
It was doing the webisodes was great, because it was like, it reminded me of when I did student theatre back at Edinburgh University before I even went to drama school, and we'd had no money and we had no budget, and we were just putting stuff on because we wanted to, and we'd cover ourselves in like green paint because all we had was green paint, and we'd do like weird dance routines about soldiers because we had green paint, and we were literally naked with loincloths rolling around in green paint.
You're posting that on Instagram, right?
It was weird. You know, we did a lot of crazy kind of just really low budget stuff, and it felt like going back to that, but in a safe environment, in a film sense. Like, we didn't have any money, we didn't have any time, but you just had to grab it and go. And it kind of gave me that kind of street smarts initially to even contemplate doing the main show, you know. So then when it came to doing the main show, I just didn't feel like I was starting from just a completely dormant position, you know.
Would you recommend other actors who want to direct start that same way?
I think I would advise it. I'm glad it felt like it was me doing my short film, you know, doing those webisodes. It was kind of the same version. And I know that Sarah Drew did her webisodes, and she did a great job too. And I think it is a really good route to go. I mean, that's what's great about our show, is that you can fall and stumble as a director, and everybody there is there, and they love you and they want you to be okay, so they're going to pick you up. So you're never going to fail terribly, you know, because, you know, it can be a very intimidating business, you know.
Going back to that first episode, did you shadow anyone? Like, how did you prepare?
I shadowed Tony Phelan and Alison Liddy Brown, and a little bit of Rob Corn and some of Tom Verica, because all those people used to direct our show. And that was great. I mean, Alison Liddy Brown taught me a lot about... She's brilliant at talking with actors, you know. Like, there's not a lot, but some TV directors, I don't like the way they talk to actors. You know, because they're very kind of focused on the end point. Like, this line has to be funny. So they'll say, just make that line funnier. And I go, well, that isn't a direction. You're not helping me. You're not helping me make this line funny. You're just saying, make it funny, you know. And that really pisses me off. Because I'm like, it's not isn't your job to kind of go direct me, help me make it funny, without just asking me for what the end product is you want, because then it does start feeling like I'm just a machine that you put a penny in the back of my, you know, and that doesn't feel good for actors. So what was your question? I feel like I'm wrong.
You answered it.
Okay,
but you know, part of it is, you know, obviously directing so many episodes. Does the experience get easier every time, or is it kind of like, you know what you're going to expect when you direct Grace?
It does get a little easier, just because when I first started directing, I thought I needed to have every single shot of every single scene in my head at the end of prep and on day one. So that's why I didn't sleep, because I thought I had to have. And I realize now you don't. You have to have your. I mean, what I do is I basically have my basic master. I mean, with this episode, we knew early on, because of the opportunity of this episode, that basically there were like 3 short plays or short stories that we actually, in Sarah Drew's scenes with Saul Rubinek, we had 3 cameras, which we never have. And we managed to choreograph it so we got the 50-50 and the coverage from both actors at the same time, which is very rare in TV to get that. And I think that created a much more visceral, real feeling. I mean, we and then we had our special shots later. But I think that's what I've realized. It has gotten easier, because I've realized my job is to set the table and to cook all the meal and to wash all the dishes and to eat all the food too, you know? And I realize now as a director, it's my job is just to set the table really well and make sure all the ingredients are fresh and ready to go. And then everyone will come, and the person who's good at cooking will come, and the person, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like you're not there to do everything, but you're there to definitely create an environment where creative things can happen, you know?
Yeah. So what's next on behind the camera for you? You've done 22 episodes of this, of Grey's. Do you want to branch out outside? I mean, have you thought about directing something else in Shondaland, trying comedy, features?
I'd love to do, I mean, Shonda's asked me to direct other episodes on other shows a few times, but it's really hard to break out, you know, because our show shoots at the same time as all the other shows. So it's almost impossible to find that time to sort of get out of the cycle of making our show, to take a month, because it takes a month to prep, direct, and then edit. I do intend to, I want to shoot an independent film, and I'm looking, so if anybody's got any good scripts, give me a shout, because, you know, and something small, because I think I've realized, you know, a lot of the episodes I've directed on the show, I've shot every kind of episode, the ones where tunnels collapse and we have hundreds of victims and huge cranes, but I'm realizing that I really respond to this kind of episode, which is much more intimate and much more small. It's just because I'm an actor, I think. I'm more interested in that. So I'm looking at the moment for my first independent film project. But tragically, I'm not a writer, you know, so I need to couple up with a good writer, because I wish I could write, and I have such admiration for writers. I don't know how they do it, you know. But I think I'm good at interpreting people's writing. So I just need to find somebody that will take a chance on me, you know, because I have. You know, the reality is I've directed 22 episodes of, I think, good television, but it's been on one show. So my challenge, my next step, is to find somebody who'll take a chance on me and go, well, maybe this guy can direct something else other than a medical show. And I'm not under any illusions that that's the next challenge for me. There's always a new challenge. That's what I love about this business, you know.
Meanwhile, you've been playing Dr. Owen Hunt for nearly a decade. We were just talking about that, a decade in the same character. First of all, that's incredibly rare, and congratulations on that. Let's go back to the first day. Do you remember your audition for Grey's Anatomy?
My audition, well, I met Shonda because I'd already met her the year before for Private Practice, and then I decided to do a show called Journeyman instead. And then there was that writer's strike, remember? And then Shonda called and said, I want to meet you again. And there's this idea of a character that she was having in her head. And she said, I'm really sorry, but there's no words written down. And I don't even have a name for him. But I think he's kind of a badass. And I think he might be connected to the army, but I don't quite know yet. And I was like, okay, cool. So we talked for a while. And then I went away, and my agent said it's between you and one other actor. And you'll know in 10 days whether you're going to be the person playing Owen Hunt. I was like, okay. So I waited 10 days, and then I got the phone call saying, yeah, she chose you. That was it. So at that point, I was like, I don't know who this character is. I'm so flattered that Shonda believes in me, but the character was still just a pencil sketch. There was nothing there. So that was it. That was my audition. I didn't even know what the character's name was until the table read.
Do you remember the other actor who was up for the part?
Don't. Who was it again? The biggest nemesis that I have is Paul Bettany. Paul Bettany, over the years when I was living in the UK, like every part I was up for, Paul got it. I was like, Paul, like you just get all the parts I'm trying to get. You know, I think everybody has that, you know. It's like that guy always gets the parts that I'm up for. Paul Bettany was mine, yeah.
Well, I think you're both doing pretty all right.
Yeah, we're doing okay now. Yeah. But who was it again? It was. It'll come back to me.
Yeah. Middle of like 5 questions from now. It'll come in. Right. You know, but being on a large ensemble, what surprises you about that? I mean, are there days where you're just like everything is totally different because there's so many people in your cast?
It's a funny beast, our show, because the cast contracts and gets smaller and gets bigger, and it moves around and it shifts. And I never thought I'd be here 10 years later. I feel so blessed that I am. And it has, the tone of the show shifts almost every season. And I think that's really the testament to why it has lasted and continues to be as relevant as it is. You know, many shows, when they get to 14th season, it starts to feel very repetitive, and I don't think our show does. But yeah, it's weird because there's times where it's like there's a whole bunch of new people, and it feels like that you're all at the first day back at school, and then suddenly I feel like I'm a senior, you know, but I still feel like I'm the new kid who started in season 5. But now I can tell people are talking to me like, oh no, you're one of the, you know, you're one of the old school, and that feels weird to me. That feels very weird.
Yeah, every season a new intern class, it feels like. I mean,
yeah, the interns are all great.
Yeah. One of the things that I love the most about Grey's is that it's really never afraid to tackle timely subjects, or to really dive deep into serious subject matter. Owen has obviously had his bouts with PTSD. Those are some of some of your greatest scenes. As an actor, how do you prepare to dive into subjects like that?
I think our show recently has really gone into some quite very issues that are very current and very present. And I think we went away from that for a while, for a few seasons. And I think we're back to that. And I think, again, that's a lot to do with Krista Vernoff's influence and passion for issues and dealing with issues and actually going, we're going to shine a light on this thing that's happening in America and on this planet right now. And that's one of the beauties of, I think, working as an actor or a writer in television. We almost shoot, we're only a few episodes ahead. you know, as opposed to like an HBO show or whatever, where they shoot like 2 years ago and then it airs in 2 years' time. We're actually kind of writing almost in real time, which I think is really interesting. It's a really interesting social part of being. It feels like you're more part of the social experiment of being alive, you know. And I feel really proud of that we're kind of coming back to that. It feels like we're like in the same way that when Owen Hunt first joined the show, we were dealing with this man who had darkness and had PTSD from a war that was happening then, you know, 10 years ago, and we're kind of back to that kind of pulse of going, no, we're going to deal with stuff that's happening now, and the stuff that's murky and dark and difficult to talk about. We're going to talk about it in our own way. Still make it entertaining, still make it, you know, engaging. It's not going to make you want to turn off, but I feel very proud that it feels like we're back to that again somehow. But you know, it's a little scary, and that's what's good about it. If you're feeling a bit scared about something, I remember the scene where my character had to choke Christina Yang, you know, and I was like, this is it. Like I'm gonna be asked to leave the show because all the fans are gonna hate me because I strangled this and all the writers and Krista and Shonda were all like, just trust us. You know, we have got your back, and this is important, what we're doing. I get that you as an actor are feeling vulnerable, because I think, especially it's interesting, I think in American television, I think a lot of actors worry about likability. And I think one of the things that I've learned being on this show is that don't act thinking about likability. I think it shortchanges your acting. It limits you as an actor if you're thinking about being likable or being liked by the audience, you know. And I think that the writers and Shonda and everybody in our show have really given me that confidence to accept that, you know.
Yeah. You know, as you bring up some of these storylines from the past, this episode, a great blast from the past came back.
Mm-hmm.
Kim Raver coming back as Teddy. It's so rare in television that characters get a chance to kind of research, maybe look at these old issues again. Mm-hmm. Did you ever think that you would get a chance to explore Owen and Teddy's relationship again?
No, I didn't think Teddy would become. I remember it was season 9, I think. My character, I was the chief, and I fired her, and I had to fire Teddy, and she cried on my shoulder, and we were both really upset because we were both really good friends. So no, I did not expect to see Teddy back again, and it's great to have her back again. She's always been such a brilliant actress, Kim Raver, but I can see in the 4 years she's been away, she's just become. It's just really cool to see an actor who's come back with even more chops than they had before, and confidence, and just like owning her own self. So yeah, I'm excited to see where that might lead, because I think it might lead somewhere quite interesting. And
you know, you mentioned this episode was written by someone that you've worked with before, Elizabeth Finch.
Yeah.
And now you're getting to act with someone who's, again, an old friend. I mean, does that make the whole process easier when you get to know these people that you're working with for so well?
It does. It does actually. It sounds like a cliche, but it really feels like a family. I mean, Elizabeth Finch. We were just talking about it earlier. Elizabeth Finch. I had to call her the night that this episode aired, and I said, I need to talk to you. And she was like, I'm in Whidbey Island at a writer's retreat, and I said, Elizabeth, I just need to hear your voice because I'm feeling really emotional about this episode, you know, and that is a great thing, you know, because it could just be this kind of cold business where we're just making TV, but to feel that for a fellow writer and, you know, for a fellow artist rather, is really great. And I feel the same way with Kim, and if Sandra came back and everybody on the show, it's a very connected family that I feel very blessed to be part of, because, you know, I think this business a lot of the time can be quite scary and feel quite cold. Mm-hmm. So to feel somewhere, to feel like I'm able to land and settle somewhere just for a few years as an actor that feels like home and feels warm, big blessing, because it's not really the life of an actor most of the time.
Yeah, especially
you know?
In this landscape where you've got, you know, 400 scripted shows and a number of which that aren't lucky enough to get a second season. Right. And then you've got the mix of, now it's all about Instagram followers and all this kind of stuff, which I think weirdly, even though it's about connection, it also adds this weird kind of level of maths to, or it feels more and more like a popularity contest, which makes me feel uncomfortable. Yeah, it's
So I feel very lucky to be kind of in my safe bubble right now.
Speaking of that bubble, after 10 seasons in this character and counting, you'll be back next year.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks, by the way.
Yep.
What keeps you coming back to Grey's?
Keeps me coming back. I mean, oh my God, what keeps me coming back to Grey's?
I mean, what doesn't keep you coming back?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, I don't know, it's hard to even describe. My life's been through a lot of things in these last 10 years, you know, and this show has at times challenged me in my life. Like, there's been times where the storylines, sometimes thematically or sometimes in much more on the nose ways, and I think in the same way that I think people's rhythms and sort of biorhythms, when you're all together for a long time, you start to really, like, I feel like the writers know what's happening in my life. This is what I'm saying. Because I'll read a script and I'll be like, this is what's happening in my life right now. And I didn't tell anybody in the writer's room that that's happening in my life right now, or something in that realm or in that tonal area is happening in my life. So that's what I mean. There's this weird alchemy that happens when you're all together for this long. And I think it's kept me afloat a lot of the time, you know, not just financially, but really emotionally and spiritually, because it feels like a family. And I'm a long way from home. I'm from Scotland, you know, and so it's again, I don't like, sometimes I get bored of hearing actors going, oh my God, my show is just like a family and we're all so in love with each other and blah, 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 blah. You know, because I'm just like, I don't believe you, you know? Give us the dirt. Yeah. But
I mean, look, it's a cliche for a reason. It's because it's true.
Right, but in my case, it definitely feels true. And you know, it's really, in the more challenging times in my life, it's really kept me grounded and focused and productive, you know? Yeah. And I feel blessed for it.
Yeah. And now I'm going to make you cry.
No, I'm a crier. My kids give me such shit about being a crier. Like, Dad, you cry all the time, everything.
So 10 years on the same show, you've had to say your share of farewell to a number of work family members. Yes. Patrick Dempsey, Sara Ramirez, who's one of my favorites, and now Jessica Capshaw and Sarah Drew. Mm-hmm. What's it like for you as an actor having to say goodbye to a friend like that and to do it on an almost regular basis? Yeah,
it's hard. It's really, really hard. And, you know, and each time it's different, you know, and it's very strange. It almost feels like, you know, when like your favorite uncle emigrates to another country, you know, they're still around, but you know, it's like it's not going to be the same anymore. And or when a play's just finally finished, and even though you know all that cast you're going to hang out with, it's not going to be the same after that. You know, it's like we'll meet up for drinks sometimes, but it's not going to be the same as when we were doing that Ibsen play or whatever play it was. It feels like that every time for me. There's just that kind of sadness of like part of the band is breaking up. You know.
Yeah. As we're here at SAG, what advice do you have for actors who want to get in the door on a show like Grey's or do a medical show?
In the acting department? Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, geez whiz. I mean, I think just do theater, you know? I mean, if it's at that point of trying to get that break in, find a play, do a play somewhere. Because I mean, I didn't ever pursue or think about my life as a kind of, I want to be a TV actor or a film actor. I just want to be a theater actor. So I can only just say what I did, which was I just focused on theater until something else happened when I was noticed in some way that I wasn't even planning. So I really think the key to it all is theater, because I think it trains your acting muscles to be truly ready for when that right role shows up or that right audition shows up. You're physically in the correct shape to perform, to deliver in that moment. I think the pressure of theatre gives you, the pressure of live performance in theatre gives you the ability to be far more relaxed in front of the camera. I think I feel that if I'm doing theatre, I'm a much better film actor. You know, and I think a lot of people think that's not true. You know, you have to focus on this, but I feel like it's almost like, and again, this is not belittling film acting at all, but like to me, it's like you're lifting a huge, you know, you're doing a huge deadlift with a full body weight, and then you're asked to do a scene for a TV show, and it's much more specific, but it's just less weight to lift. So it's much easier for you to do it because you're used to lifting this massive weight each night. So that's what I believe in.
Yeah. What about the best advice you've gotten from a fellow actor about the craft?
I remember Liam Neeson. I got offered this role in a TV show called Rome for HBO, and you've seen it. And Liam, and I wasn't going to do it because I was doing all these like independent films and plays and stuff in the UK, and I was like, I don't know about doing this. I don't even know what HBO is because I was living in England at the time. And I was doing this film with Liam Neeson. I was playing one of Liam Neeson's henchmen in this Ridley Scott film that we're shooting in Spain. And Liam had found out, because we all used to drink in the pubs in Spain together, that I'd been offered this role, and I said no to it. I said no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go back to Bristol and do this independent film that I committed to. And Liam like came up to me and he said, I've got a terrible Irish accent, but he said, you're gonna step outside, Kevin. And I was like, what? He said, come outside. So he dragged me outside on a snowy street in the middle of northern Spain. And he said, some of the boys have been telling me that you've said no to this part in this HBO show. And I was like, yeah, Liam, I've got these other 2 offers and I'm really into these 2 independent films. And he was like, he said, wake up. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, wake up. He said, this is the moment, Kevin. It's happening right now. This is the part. You can't see it because you're young and you've got all this ego and you've got all this sort of piss and vinegar inside you and you think you're better than it. But I'm telling you, as somebody who's been down this road, this is your moment. And in a year you turn on the TV and you see some other whoever playing that part.
Paul Bettany.
How are you going to feel? Paul Bettany. How are you going to feel? How are you going to feel, Kevin? And he was like almost yelling at me in the street. He was like, how are you going to feel? How are you going to feel? You're an idiot. And I was like, oh, okay. And he said, I suggest you run, don't walk to a phone and call your agent and hope that they haven't moved on and offered it to somebody else. So I did. I ran to the phone and called my agent. And they said, no, funnily enough, they just came back with a little bit more money. So...
So this is the part where you say thank you, Liam Neeson.
I was going to say thank you, Liam Neeson, because it literally was the best advice. And I'm trying to figure out what that advice was, but it was him just going, wake up. Yeah. I was going, wake up. Don't be... I was in my 20s. I was this pompous kind of like, I'm going to be a movie star. I'm going to be like this brilliant theater actor and TV's this and blah, blah, blah. And he was just like, you've got it all wrong. You really have got it all wrong. And he just humbled me.
And now all the film actors are coming and doing television.
Yeah, exactly. And, so that was a pretty cool story. That's my Liam Neeson story. There you go.
Let's bring it full
and
circle.
I do thank Liam, by the way.
Bringing it full circle, what advice do you have for any actors out here who want to add directing to their resumes?
Shadow people. Just go and shadowing, find directors that you like. And it's hard, actually, to get a shadowing position. They're very sought after now. And so just try to get with a director that works and ask them if you can shadow them. And it's amazing what doors that will open, because you spend so much. And the other thing I would say is, if you are shadowing a director, shadow all the way. I've had some shadows who've been like, I'll kind of show up at 10 o'clock and I'll leave at kind of 5 o'clock, and I'm not going to be there for your editing time because my family are going to Catalina or whatever, And I think if you're going to shadow, like that's what I did. I was there at 6 a.m. and left and only stopped shadowing when the director's cut was delivered to the producers and watched every step of the way. And I think that's what I would do, is find somebody to shadow and really shadow them. Don't half shadow them.
Yeah. Well, that's all the time that we have tonight. Thank you, Kevin McKidd, for coming out. And thank you all for coming out.
Thank you. Is that okay?